Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've been having a bit of an issue with my headphones lately. Um, so yes, today we're going to be doing some revision of everything we've been learning over the last few lessons. So if you have any questions or you would like me to explain something that we've been talking about recently, today is your chance to ask me those questions before we move on to our next topic. So we're going to start with presenting our homework to the class. So can everybody please grab have your homework that you've done over the last few lessons ready? So can I get a volunteer who's ready with their homework to present to the class? Okay. So I'll pick someone to start then. Vugia Khan, it's Ben, right?
Yeah.
Terrific. Are you ready to present your homework to the class?
Yeah, but I haven't.
Ah, is anyone ready to present their homework? Yes. If you have it, if you're able to type it out, that would help too. We'll come back to that later. We'll do the homework in the later part of the lesson then, so that'll give everyone time to get it ready to present. No worries. Okay, so we'll go into some revision then, and I'll give you my comments on the homework over the Zalo app. So we'll just worry about the homework later. So let's go over what we covered in our first lesson. So some of the things that we covered in our first lesson we learnt some vocabulary in regards to debating. So I'm going to pick a student at random, and then I'm going to give you a definition of the word, and you just need to tell me which word I am describing to you. So I will pick star first.
Yes.
So can you tell me which word I'm talking about? The statement or topic that is being debated.
Motion.
Very good. Very good. That is the motion. If it helps, guys, you are allowed to have your handouts in front of you, so you can read from the sheets if it helps you. Next up, I will ask LaRue.
Hello, teacher.
Hello. So, which word am I describing? The team or individual who opposes the motion and presents arguments against it?
The opposition team.
Very good. Thank you. Next up, Lucia, please.
Yes.
Hello. So, which word am I describing? A structured discussion where opposing viewpoints are presented and arguments are made.
Arguments are made.
Yep. So which word am I describing? A structured discussion where opposing viewpoints are presented and arguments are made.
Arguments are made.
But what's the word? What is the particular word that I'm describing?
I don't know. Argument.
Nope. What are we learning to do in this class? What's the main topic of this class? What are we learning to do? Starts with a D.
Debate.
That's it. That was the definition of the word debate, because it's a structured discussion where opposing teams present their viewpoints and they present arguments as well. Okay. Next up, I will ask Emma.
Yes.
Whoop. Sorry, I thought I was asking you to unmute, but you beat me to it. Which word am I describing? An appeal to ethics or credibility to persuade the audience?
The ethos.
Very good. Ethos. Well done. Next up, I will ask David.
Yes.
Okay, which word am I describing? The distribution of arguments and responsibilities among team members.
Oh. I can't remember that.
Do you have the handout ready?
So you mean I must raise my hand, right?
No, do you have the sheet with all of the vocabulary words on it?
Yes, I have my notebook, but I left it at my parents' home.
Oof, no worries. So that word was team split.
Split?
Team split. That's right. The distribution of arguments and responsibilities among team members.
Okay.
Okay. Ben.
Yes.
Which word am I describing? The content or substance of the arguments presented in a debate.
Say it again. Can you say it again?
Yep. The content or substance of the arguments presented in a debate.
It's matter. It's matter.
Very good, Ben. Thank you. Okay. I'll ask Jenny next.
Hello.
Hello. Can you please tell me which word I'm describing? An appeal to logic and reasoning to persuade the audience.
Are you talking about logos?
I am very good.
Logos. I don't remember how to say it.
No, you said that right. Logos. Well done. Next up, I'll ask Jelly. You guys are getting too quick to unmute for me. Okay. The word I'd like you to tell me is the strategy or approach used to present arguments in a debate.
It's method.
Very good. Thank you, Jelly. And Zoe, I'll ask you next.
Hello.
Hello. So which word am I describing? The person who moderates the debate and ensures a fair and respectful decision is made. It's a really unusual sounding word.
Interlocutor.
Very good. Thank you, Zoe. And I think the last person to ask, Minduan Thithuk. I apologize if I said that wrong.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm going to change my name. Yes, you can ask me.
So the word I would like you to define is a writing framework that stands for topic sentence, explanation, evidence, and linking sentence, and is used to structure persuasive arguments.
Teal paragraph.
Very good. The teal paragraph structure.
Yeah.
Oh, I just heard myself echoing then. Okay, so well done, everybody. It seems like we've all been studying the vocabulary and learning the words. And like I said before, in our classes, if you would like to have the worksheets that I give out to you, if you'd like to have those in front of you in the class, if it would help, you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, so we've done a bit of our vocabulary practice. Does anybody have any questions about any of the vocabulary that we've learned so far? So do we all understand what the words and their definitions mean? Terrific. Good. Okay. So the next thing I would like to do, because we didn't actually formally go over it in class, I just gave it to you as a handout to read, is I just want to discuss the debate etiquette and guidelines. So these are just like, they're not formal rules, but they're things to think about to make the debate as smooth and respectful as possible. So a little introduction here is debate provides an opportunity for constructive discussions and the exchange of ideas. So that means that we have a chance to really expand or grow our knowledge and learn some new things about topics that we didn't know before. So to ensure a fair and respectful environment, it is important to follow certain guidelines. So our first one, I'll actually share my screen for this one so we can go through it together. So our first guideline is to be respectful. So we want to listen attentively to others' opinions without interrupting. So we want to make sure that we're really paying attention when someone else is speaking and we don't interrupt and we let them finish. The next point is we want to avoid personal attacks and derogatory language. So don't swear, don't say any bad words. And when you make your counter arguments and you try and prove the other team wrong, make sure you only talk about the topic of the debate and don't say anything bad about the person speaking. So if you think they're wrong, don't say, oh, well, that's just stupid, I think this. Try and keep your arguments to the topic. And the next one is a follow-on of the previous one. Treat all participants with courtesy and respect, even if you disagree with their views. So again, if you think what someone on the other team has said is wrong, be polite and only make arguments towards what they've said. Don't attack them personally. Our next point is use evidence. So we want to support our argument with credible evidence, facts, statistics, or examples. So we want to make sure that, we want to make sure that when we use our evidence, we're only using evidence from credible sources. So we want to make sure that the audience is going to believe us. And by using sources that the audience and the judges will believe, we increase our chance of making a good argument. We want to clearly state the source of our information to enhance the credibility of the points we make. So when we do use our evidence, we want to let the audience know who said it. So is it from a government survey? Is it from a scientist that is an expert on the issue? Whoever it is, let the audience know. And we want to avoid using unsupported opinions or assumptions. So what that means is that just because we think something is correct doesn't mean that it is. So we don't want to put our own personal opinions on the topic into our argument. We want to, again, rely on the evidence and make sure that we can tell everybody who said the facts that we're using. Number 3, we want to, just going to check the chat quickly, guys. Number 3, we want to stay on topic. We want to focus on the motion or the topic being debated, and we want to avoid going off on unrelated tangents. So what that means is that if you are arguing, for example, is it better to, I just went blank there. So sorry, let's take the topic of are animals in zoos better off than wild animals? So if we're arguing that, we don't want to go off and start talking about this time I went to the beach with my family, or I saw my friend yesterday. We want to stick to the topic at hand and argue only about what we're debating about. Strive to address the key arguments and points related to the motion. So that is quite similar to the first point, except when we sit down and think about the topic that is being debated, we will come up with arguments, points of argument for our team, and we want to address those arguments with as much detail as possible. And if necessary, ask for clarification or provide clarification to ensure a common understanding. So if you don't understand an argument that your opponents have made, or if you don't properly understand the topic that we're debating about, make sure that you ask someone to explain it to you so that you do understand. And likewise, if someone on your opposing team doesn't understand the topic, make sure that you help explain it to them so that they understand. So we make sure that we're all arguing about the same thing, because there's nothing that will take a debate off the tracks quicker than this person arguing about one thing and this person arguing about something completely different. It'll just destroy the flow of the debate. Our next point is be concise. So concise means keep it simple and keep it short. So present your arguments clearly and succinctly. So presenting your arguments clearly is just make sure that your arguments are easy to understand, and succinctly is just another word for concise. So don't waffle on, don't just keep talking because you think you have to say more words. You just want to make your point as quickly and as understandable as possible. We want to use logical and well-structured sentences to convey our point effectively. So when we are putting our arguments together, we want to structure them in a way that makes sense and allows us to make the best point possible, so that the judges and the audience have to be on our side. They have to agree with what we're saying. And also, by structuring your arguments well, structuring your sentences well, you will make your point more effectively. And that simply means that you have done your job well. Avoid unnecessary repetition or excessive use of jargon that may confuse the audience. So when you are presenting your arguments, make sure that you know what you want to say very well through your research, so that you're not forgetting what you want to say and you're not repeating yourself too much. So an example would be if I wanted to say, I think we should go to the beach, and you get lost, you don't want to stand there saying, I think we should, I think we should go to the beach. So that is unnecessary repetition. And jargon means industry-specific language. So as a dance teacher, there were a lot of words that I had to use that were very specific to the dancing that I taught. Now, if I was talking to somebody that wasn't a dancer, I wouldn't want to use those words in a conversation because they wouldn't know what I was talking about. And that is jargon. So words that you use when you're talking about a specific topic, and those words are special for that one topic. So try and avoid words like that because the audience won't know what you're talking about. Our next point is give everyone a chance. Allow all participants to express their viewpoints and contribute to the discussion. So simply put, just give everyone a chance to put their arguments into the debate so that we have as many different viewpoints as possible to consider. We want to listen actively to others' arguments and be open to considering a different perspective. So when somebody else is talking, don't sit there and just wander off in your head and start thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow when you hang out with your friends. Make sure that you are really listening to what the other team is saying, because they may say something that you'd never thought of before, and that might change your mind on the topic that you're talking about. And finally, avoid dominating the conversation and provide opportunities for quieter participants to speak up. So if you are naturally very loud and confident when you talk, if someone on your team or on the other team even is a bit more shy than you and may not be as loud, they might talk like this because they're not as confident. The louder person will tend to take over the conversation, and it's never usually deliberate. It's not something they do to be horrible, but it's just something that tends to happen. So make sure when you're in a debate situation that you always give everybody a chance to speak and say their arguments. Okay, number 6, we've got one more to go after this. Constructive criticism. Engage in constructive criticism by addressing the merits of an argument rather than attacking the person presenting it. So if somebody on the other team has said something that you don't agree with and you think is wrong, when you say that, make sure that you say it by explaining why you think what they have said is wrong, and try and find a nice way to say it. So don't just be like, that's wrong because of this. You could say something like, I think you may be able to prove that point better by defining the issue more clearly. So I've told them a way to make it better rather than to just attack the person. So I haven't said anything like, oh, well, you're stupid for saying that, or I think that's stupid, or you're dumb or something. Always try and say it as nicely as possible, even when you are trying to say what they've said is wrong. That's very important. Number 6, provide feedback that helps refine an argument and encourages further discussion. So going back to the first point of number 6, when you do provide criticism to somebody's argument, make sure that you don't just say that's wrong. Give them your opinion on how they can make their argument better. Because when you do that, they'll be able to present their argument better, and you'll be able to have more of a discussion about the issue. And finally, maintain a positive and collaborative tone throughout the debate. So positive, always have a good attitude about the debate. Don't get grumpy or upset or angry. And to have a collaborative tone means even though you're arguing against the people on the other team, you still want to try and work together. So everybody will learn new things that they didn't know before, and everybody will, even in disagreement, everybody will get along and the conversation will flow more smoothly. And finally, time management. Adhere to the time limits specified for each speaker or segment of the debate. So generally speaking, each speaker or each member of each team gets somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes to talk. Now, if you're just talking freestyle off the top of your head, that can seem like forever. And you might think, I'd never be able to talk for that long. But once you start researching and putting your arguments together, and you've actually got a structured speech with dot points to talk about, you'll actually find that the time flies by. And before long, you might only be 3/4 of the way through your speech, and the time key or the interlocutor is saying, no, you've got to stop. So we need to be mindful and make sure that we plan our speech so that it only lasts as long as the time we're given, because that can cost you some points going over time or too far under time even. Respect the timekeeper's instructions and conclude your arguments within the allotted time. So that's just a very similar point to the first one. If you do go over time and the timekeeper rings the bell or cuts you off, you need to respect that timekeeper's instructions. And if they say stop talking, you need to stop talking. And finally, use your time wisely, ensuring a balance between presenting your own arguments and allowing for rebuttals. So past the first speaker of the proposition, each speaker that speaks needs to make counter arguments to what the speaker that went before them just said. So you now have to factor in having to make counter arguments along with making your own arguments. So we need to make sure that we're careful with how we use our time so that we have a chance to say everything that we need to and everything that we want to say. So remember, guys, a debate is an opportunity to learn, develop critical thinking skills, and foster effective communication. So to be able to communicate well and have everybody understand you. By adhering to these guidelines or by following these guidelines, we can create a productive and respectful debating environment. So that just goes back to one of the first things that we talked about. We're here to learn and we're here to present our arguments, and we're there to win the debate as well. So I'm back. Does anybody have any questions about those debating guidelines?
No.
No.
Terrific.
No, I understand all of them.
Beautiful. So that means I did my job and I communicated effectively. So, okay, next up in our second lesson, we started to talk about developing arguments. So, yeah, we started to talk about developing our arguments and what a motion statement was. So I'm going to share my screen again. So we'll just use this first topic here as an example. So the motion is always presented by the proposition team, because the proposition team agrees with, the proposition team agrees with the topic. So they will always be the team to present the motion. And the motion statement, if the topic is, should schools require students to wear uniforms? If the proposition want to agree with that topic, then their motion would be something similar to, this house believes that schools should require students to wear uniforms. So it's a very clear and concise statement that perfectly sums up their side of the argument. And then we see down here, you don't have to read the whole text, but just read everything after the number of the argument. So arguments for the proposition, if they believe that school uniforms should be worn. So the first one might be equality and inclusivity. So basically, everybody looks the same. So because they're wearing the same clothes, and nobody can be singled out and picked on based on what they're wearing. Number two is discipline and focus. So because students are all wearing the same thing, no one can really get distracted by if someone's wearing a really bright, sparkly shirt, or if someone's wearing the newest cool jeans or anything like that. Everyone's wearing the same, so no one's going to get distracted and everyone's going to be focused on their classwork. Another argument here is safety and security. So if everybody at the school is wearing uniforms, then it's easier for the teachers and the other members of staff to identify strangers in the school. So if someone should not be at that school, it's so easy to tell who they are because they're not wearing the uniform. They are wearing something else. So that's just a safety issue to think about. And number four, cost and convenience. School uniforms can actually save parents some money on school costs, because they don't have to worry about buying so many other clothes for their children, because kids are at school so often that the school uniform is going to be they're going to be wearing their school uniforms for most of the time. So that's another issue to think about. Cool. So now we'll have a quick look at the arguments for the opposition. So number one, self-expression and individuality. So each person likes different things, unless there's some real rare circumstances, but in general, each and every person likes their own different types of clothes, music, all sorts. So if students are required to wear school uniforms, that takes away from their chance to wear what they want and to express themselves through their through what they wear. Number two, comfort and well-being. So uniforms aren't always the most comfortable clothes to wear. Sometimes if the shirt might be a little bit too tight around under the arms, you try and lift your arms up, you feel quite uncomfortable. You feel trapped in the clothes. Whereas the clothes that you buy from the shop that you like, they are more they fit you better. You feel comfortable in them, so you want to wear them more. Argument number 3, preparation for the real world. So in the real world, people don't very often have to wear uniforms unless it's for a special type of job. So in the real world, you're going to have a lot more choice about the clothes you wear. So by not having to wear school uniforms, that can prepare you for the real world, because it'll give you the chance to learn how to dress appropriately for certain situations. And number 4 is parental choice and autonomy. So autonomy basically means you're in control of yourself. So if you have to wear a school uniform, that can take away from the parents' choice of what they want their children to wear. And it can also, again, take away from the choice of the student to wear what they want. If they don't like the school uniform. So those are just some example arguments from this topic. And one final point that I would like to make is that because the proposition gets to choose the motion, they actually could have a motion that says, this house believes that schools should not require students to wear uniforms. And that means that all of the arguments that we just read for the opposition would actually become arguments for the proposition, and vice versa. So all of the arguments that we read out for the proposition would then need to become arguments for the opposition. Okay. Ben's just said, and his uniform at school is very hot. So yeah, I used to go to a private school for a little while when I was 14, and we actually had 2 different uniforms. In the summer, we would have shorts and a short sleeve shirt, but in the winter, we would have to wear long sleeve shirts, full length pants, and a blazer and a jumper. So yeah, we were lucky in that respect. We had choices with what we wanted, with what we could wear, depending on the season. So does anybody have any questions about the motion statement, the topic, or the arguments presented? Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Yeah, good.
Terrific. Sorry, was someone going to ask something? No, terrific. Guys, I am so happy with how you guys are understanding what we're talking about, because a lot of this stuff is actually quite, sorry, my headphones are falling out. A lot of this stuff is actually quite advanced and quite difficult. So if you are really understanding this, you're doing so well. And I just want you guys to know that. And on the flip side, if there is anything that you don't know or that you don't understand, it is far better to ask the question and get the answer, because there's nothing to be embarrassed about not knowing something. It might just be the way I've explained it. So yeah, if you do have any questions, please ask them. I really want to hammer that point home. Okay, the next thing that we talked about was the difference between debate topics, motions, and themes. So I'm going to share my screen again. Whoop, got a few more messages. Okay. So the next thing that we discussed was topics, themes, and motions. So remembering that we'll only use one or two examples from this sheet, so we've still got a little bit more to talk about. So if the topic is, should every child learn to swim? So with our topics, there tend to be little clue words in these in the topic to give you an idea about what the theme is. So if we were to have a look at topic 1, should every child learn to swim? So in my opinion, the two clue words that give us a clue to the theme would be learn and swim. So when we have a look at the word learn, that makes us think of education, because the point of an education is so you can learn new information. And whenever we talk about swimming, one of the most important reasons for you to learn how to swim is so that you can be safe if you're ever around water. So the other theme for this debate would be water safety. So then we have our two clue words that give us our two halves of the theme. So should every child learn to swim? The theme, water safety and education. So learning to be safe around the water. Does that make sense so far, everybody? Just chime in on the microphones.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Very good, guys. So the motion, which is always presented by the proposition team, would be, so remember, it's a short, clear statement that perfectly sums up the proposition team's argument. So the motion for a debate like this would be, this house believes that every child should learn how to swim. So it's just a short statement, not very long, and it perfectly sums up the argument of the proposition. Now, one more example that we'll use. Let's have a look at topic number 2. So should children be allowed to have smartphones? So if we look at this topic here, we would be looking at my first clue word would be children. And my second keyword, or clue word, sorry, would be what the children are allowed to have. So in this sentence, it is smartphones. So with those two clue words, we're able to come up with the theme of technology and childhood. So obviously a smartphone is a piece of technology. So there is our first theme. And children being our second clue word, the topic for that, or the theme for that, would be childhood. So whenever you read the topic of a debate, you should always be able to at least have a go at guessing what the theme of the debate is. So, no formal homework this weekend before your next class. But excuse me. Ben, to answer your question, water safety in the shower goes as far as just make sure you don't slip on the tiles and hurt yourself by falling over. But I don't think you're at any real risk of drowning in the shower, so you don't need to be able to swim for that. But yeah, I like those questions that come out of the blue. They're funny. So you're not proper homework, but if you would like to just do a little exercise to try and be able to learn what the theme of a debate is, I just want you to Google search or just find a list of debate topics, have a look at those debate topics, try and find your clue words, so the words that will give you a hint about what the theme is, and then try and guess what the theme of the debate is. So that's just something to do if you want. It will help in the long run by doing it, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Okay. Let me... Okay, so the last couple of things that we talked about. So I've just got to send Ms. Duc a quick message. Okay, sorry about that. So the last couple of things that I just wanted to go over and then ask if you've got any questions is understanding the, understanding the proposition and the opposition and how they formulate arguments. So I'm just going to sum these points up. So if you're on the proposition team, the first thing you want to do is clearly state your position. So make sure the audience and the judges know what side you are arguing for. You always want to provide solid evidence for any arguments that you make, because the audience are more likely to believe if you're talking from a position of authority. So if you've got someone that knows the topic backing you up, then they're more likely to believe you. Always make sure that you can apply logic to your arguments. So make sure that people are able to follow along with what you're saying. So that comes down to how you structure your arguments and how you then present them. Make sure people can follow along. Our next point is make sure you know, or make sure that you prepare for anything that your opposing team might say. Because if you pre-prepare for an argument they make, you're that much quicker to be able to say, oh, well, in actual fact, here's why that is wrong. And if you can do that, you score big points. Use persuasive techniques. So make sure that you use a lot of persuasion tactics in your argument. And persuasion simply means convincing somebody of your idea by pointing out the good things about it, to making them want to do something or think something because of how good it is or how good you make it seem. So if you do that, that's a great way to make people want to believe you. Next up, structure your arguments carefully. So make sure that the order that you say things in makes the strongest point possible for your team. And we're going to learn more about that later. And finally, summarize all of your key points. So anything that you've said that is really important for the audience and the judges to remember, make sure that you say that again at the end of your speech. It'll help them remember, and it will make your speech look a lot more organized. And to finish up, just a few points on the opposition. So of course, you want to make sure that you begin by saying, I disagree with this motion, and here's why. So clearly state that you do not believe what the audio, what they're talking about. Number two, you want to provide evidence for your arguments, but you also want to provide evidence that challenges the proposition, make their job difficult for them. Number three, when you use logical reasoning, you want to try and find the problems in the proposition's argument. So if you can say, well, I understand what you're saying, but what about this? And then you say something that just totally shuts their argument down, that's a very good strategy for being on the opposition. You want to anticipate, so you want to expect the arguments that the proposition are going to make and pre-prepare counter arguments for their claims. So if you can shut them down before the debate's even started, that's going to be a super strong strategy. You want to use persuasive techniques like presenting logical fallacies, or finding logical fallacies, which are things we think are true, but they're not actually true. We want to look at the proposition's arguments quite critically, and we want our counter arguments to be very well structured. So we also want to structure our arguments too, so they're very similar to how the proposition does it, so that we can put forth the strongest argument possible. And finally, we also want to summarize our key points so that when we're finished talking, we remind the judges what the most important things we said are. So you guys have done fantastic today with your revision. I'm going to have a look at your homework that you've sent me over the weekend, and I'm going to provide some feedback comments in the Zalo group. So thank you very much, guys. It's been terrific. You guys have done really well today. So enjoy your weekend, and if you want to, remember to look up some debate topics, look for the clue words, and try and figure out the theme of the debate. That's optional work. So I'll see you guys later. Well done, everybody.
Bye, teacher.
Bye, teacher.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.